Hi, and welcome to Tranquil Talks with Chris. This is your space to slow down and catch your breath from the noise and chaos of work and life. A space where you can take the time that you need to think things through more clearly. And a space where I hope that you'll feel supported to take just one small intentional step forward in how you communicate and how you lead yourself. I'm your host, Chris, and I'm really glad to be here with you today. I want to ask you something as a fellow introvert, and I'd love for you to take the time that you need to sit with it. When you think about how you communicate at work, in meetings, in messages, in the moments when someone puts you on the spot, how much of that is actually you and how you naturally communicate? And how much of it is what you learn to do to survive that kind of context or environment? For me, after spending 30 years inside of corporate environments, and then now 5 to 6 more years after finding my way out of them, I find that most of us as introverts are not communicating from our natural selves. We're communicating from our survival selves, from the defaults that we've built in response to environments that weren't designed for how we're wired. And these defaults that we've built, most often they've happened gradually, slowly over time, and often without us even realizing it. And I don't know about you, but for me, I've been exhausted communicating for over 30 years in environments that were not designed naturally for me, that were really more targeted naturally towards extroverts. I've been exhausted all the time. And I want to share something even more personal that I was reflecting on literally just last week. For the first time in as long as I can remember, I feel like I have finally returned to my whole natural self as an introvert. And what's really interesting to me is that this has been happening now. It's been happening technically since last year, all of 2025 and still now into 2026. And for me, this has been happening during a period that has also held some of the heaviest grief of my life. Losing my beautiful mom last summer, who was my favorite person, my earliest champion. It's been really interesting for me. For the first time in my adult working life, I'm not communicating on someone else's timeline. I'm not thinking on my feet because someone else's agenda requires it. I'm not sending emails before I'm ready because the culture I was in expected a fast response. I'm building something now entirely on my own, and that is my own. My business called Lotus Learning Sanctuary. And for the first time, I get to take the time I need to think before I speak, to process before I respond, to let ideas breathe before I choose to share them. And do you know what that feels like? Oh, calm and relief. And from that calm, from that sense of relief, there has been more creativity, more energy, more genuine productivity than I have had in years. And that's no coincidence. That is what's happening and what happens when a person who is naturally introverted finally gets to communicate from their natural self rather than their survival self. And here's something I really want you to hear. I really want you to know from my heart to yours. I spent 30 years in corporate HR running on defaults that weren't really mine. I was over-explaining when I felt anxious. I would go quiet when I felt unsafe. I would say yes when I needed to say no. Oh God, I said yes so many times when I needed to say no. And I would respond before I was ready because the environment rewarded speed over depth. And then for a few years after I left corporate, I worked as a subcontractor, helping to build other people's businesses before I finally said, hold on, it's time for me to build my own business. Anyways, those same defaults, they followed me. That's what defaults do. They don't disappear just because the environment changes. They start to disappear when you actually see them. That's the beauty and that's the kicker, all in one. So I've mentioned the word default now, communication default, a few times. What is that exactly? Well, I would say you can think of it like this. They're your communication patterns, the way you respond under pressure, the way you handle conflict, the way you show up in meetings or in written messages. These patterns, they didn't come from nowhere. They were shaped by every environment that you've ever navigated. Every time speaking up felt risky. Every time you were rewarded for being fast instead of thoughtful. And every time you shrunk yourself to fit a space that was not sized for you. Over time, these responses become automatic. They become your defaults. And they're not your fault. They're adaptive. We are being adaptive. And for us, they made sense in the context that created them. But adaptive is not the same as chosen. And chosen is what a personal communication operating system is all about. A personal communication OS asks a very different question than most communication advice asks. It doesn't ask, how do I get better at communicating? Instead, it asks, how do I communicate in a way that's actually true to how I'm wired? How do I stop running on defaults that were built for survival and start making intentional choices about how I show up? That shift right there, that shift from automatic to intentional, that is where everything can begin to change. And it all starts with simply seeing your defaults clearly. Please know you don't have to start with fixing anything. Again, you simply need to start, or it starts by you seeing your defaults clearly. What you can name, you can choose. What you can choose, you can change. I want to share 3 defaults for me. I'm a big believer in the power of 3. So a lot of my episodes are built around 3. It's not AI generating this. It's me using the power of 3. I've already mentioned them briefly, but I want to go into them just a little bit more. These may all be defaults that you as a fellow introvert may recognize. You may recognize one of them. You may recognize all of them. But today I want to share with you the 3 that are most prevalent for me as my communication patterns. For me, the first is communicating before I'm ready. Responding in the meeting before having time to think. Sending that message before fully processing. Answering questions on the spot when what was truly needed was 10 minutes of quiet decompression first. This default gets built in environments that reward speed. And it has costed me, and it costs all introverts, enormous energy because we're working against our natural processing rhythm every single time. So for me, that's default number 1, and it may very well be a default for you as well. Communicating before you're ready. Here's another default that you may recognize. Over-explaining under pressure. Oh, wow, this is, this is so me, big time. When you feel anxious And side note for me, I have generalized anxiety disorder. So anxiety is my BFF. It is always with me. But when you feel anxious or put on the spot, you'll add more words, more context, more justification. And not because the other person needs it. It feels safer for us to do that than to leave space to offer silence. This default gets built in environments where you may not feel fully trusted, where you feel like your judgment needs defending. And the third default that you may recognize yourself in, and has definitely been true for me, is shrinking to fit. It's saying yes when you mean no. It's staying quiet in the meeting, even when you have something important to say. It's making yourself smaller so the space feels more comfortable for everyone else. This default gets built in environments that were designed for a very different kind of wiring than yours and mine, and where fitting in has felt like the only path to belonging. Like I said, you may recognize one of these, you may recognize all of them. You may have your own set of communication defaults or patterns. Whichever way, all good. I want you to again know this and hear this clearly from my heart to yours. These defaults that we have, they're not character flaws. They are sure as hell not proof that we're bad at communicating. They are the entirely understandable responses of deeply capable introverts who have learned to navigate environments that were not built for us. And they can be changed, not overnight, not through sheer willpower, but through the consistent practice of noticing and then choosing something different. As we get ready to wrap up, I want to offer you one small thing for this week, one reflection, one little experiment that you can try when you feel ready. And with this little experiment or reflection I'm about to offer, I'm not asking you to change anything yet. I just want you to work on seeing something. So here it is. Think about one communication situation that regularly costs you energy. That may be a recurring meeting or a type of message that you dread sending. It could be for you maybe a conversation that you keep avoiding. A moment where you consistently leave feeling drained or not quite like yourself. These are just examples to get you thinking. I'm sure in your own capable mind, you'll think of that one communication situation that regularly is costing you energy. Once you've thought about it, ask yourself, what default am I running in that communication moment or situation? Is it maybe for you, is it going to be asking yourself, am I communicating before I'm ready? Am I over-explaining because I don't feel safe? Am I shrinking to fit a space that was never sized for me? Again, you don't have to change anything yet. You don't have to put pressure on yourself to fix it right away. I want you to just name it. Write it down if that helps, or say it out loud if that feels right for you. The moment you can see a default clearly, really see it, and without judgment, once you see that default, it will start to lose its automatic hold on you. And that's where your personal communication OS begins, with one honest moment of, oh, that's what I've been doing. Your communication defaults aren't your destiny. They're your starting point. And the fact that you're here, listening, reflecting, willing to look honestly at the patterns that you've been running on, that already means something. This is the work, the quiet, patient, deeply personal work. And it's work you don't have to do all at once. It's all about small steps, real shifts at your own pace. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. And until next time, please take good care of yourself and know that here at Tranquil Talks with Chris, you are always welcome here. You belong. Cheers.